Hey everybody, what's going on? My name is Gary, for those of you who don't know me,
And I'm Mike.
and we are here to do an album review of the U2 album No Line on the Horizon. Mike and I, since we both own every CD in the world, were fortunate enough to obtain a early copy of the album, which is released actually as of this recording. Today is Tuesday the 24th. It's released in the UK today. And next Tuesday, March 2nd or 3rd or whatever, in America. So since we have the early copy, we decided to listen to it. We've lived with it for about a weekend now, and we want to do kind of a full track-by-track review of the album.
What we're going to do is we're going to post this an audio copy of this as a podcast. So basically, it's an MP3 file. You can download it and listen to it at your leisure if you don't want to sit through this video, because this video will be in two parts: one part on Gary's channel, one part on my channel. In addition, if you would like to listen along to the songs, the album is streaming on U2's MySpace site, which is myspace.com/U2. So you might find that helpful, because we're going to talk in some detail about each song, so you might want to follow along and see what we're talking about and see if you agree or disagree.
So we're going to get into a lot of depth here. I'm a probably bigger U2 fan than Mike, but we're both big U2 fans. We're going to do track by track and just see where this goes. So with that said, do you have anything to add before we start this official podcast, Mike?
No, ready to go.
All right, enjoy, everybody.
So the album starts off with the title track, No Line on the Horizon, and this song right away starts to show a lot of different sounds in it, and some of which are kind of unusual for them. It makes it sound like something fresh, although it's not this huge radical departure that you might have expected from all the hype. Bono's voice right away sounds really good. There's lots of weird little synth sounds and things like that. And it has kind of an ocean motif. It starts off with these lines about, I know a girl, she's like the sea. One day she's still, the next she swells. And it's so it starts off, with all these ocean metaphors. And I don't think it's quite as out there and bizarre as you might have expected them to kick this album off with, like Zoo Station, for example, was for Achtung Baby. You hear that first guitar sound and you go, whoa, what's going on here?
It sounds like a more rocky version of Zoo Station or The Fly. Those elements of Achtung Baby are in there, but it's a little bit more on the rock side. They've scaled back kind of the quirky, experimental side of it, but it's there. But I think that'll make a great concert opener, and it's a great album opener too.
Yeah, it's a good opener, and I just hope that in concert they kind of amp it up a bit and put more guitars on it and make it a little, more loud and celebratory. I think it should be a little less restrained than it is.
Yeah, I can hear there's a lot of really neat little synth parts. There's a lot of layers, but there's definitely the guitar kind of rock track is a layer on there too. Now, it's interesting. I heard right away the motif I heard throughout the album was kind of about space and time, and it not necessarily being distinct. And the lyrics that stand out for me is infinity is a great place to start. I love that, as well as time is irrelevant, not linear. And to me, that's what goes through this album. So it's really interesting. We both here, right from the very beginning, are looking at this from two different perspectives. I can't see them not opening with, or I can't see them opening with anything other than this for a concert. So it's a great song, great hook, and it's a great return to form, I think.
So the second song is called Magnificent, and this one, the intro is a little unusual for them, but when the full band kicks in, right away, okay, this is a classic U2 song. You can just tell the guitars, the drums, everything. And then the first thing Bono even does with his voice, he starts doing these things, and you're like, okay, this is U2.
Yeah, the OOOs are some of the most repetitive lyrics on the album, that's for sure. I thought it was interesting how murky and dark, and a friend heard it, and he's like, that sounds like Ozzy Osbourne, like not Crazy Train, Bark at the Moon or something or another. So yeah, but the second that murky murky side of it goes away, it's a very uplifting sounding, very typical U2. I mean, right away you hear the Edge's guitar. To me, it's a standout track. It was the one track that stayed with me almost with my first listen. To me, I said, this is a standout track. This is going to be a big hit, and in my mind, it would be a great concert finale moment.
The one thing that jumped out for me with this one, at first I thought it was, okay, this is standard U2, and I like them more when they're doing more, creative, out-of-the-box things, not their typical thing, but as I listened to this more and more, it grew on me, and especially the lyrics grew on me, and I think this is the beginning of something I noticed throughout the album, which is they've obviously spent a lot more time laboring over these songs, crafting them, honing them, and I think that shows in the lyrics as well as the music, because in most of the songs there are at least one, if not multiple, little, really clever moments in the lyrics, and this one has a couple of them. It has this one isn't quite as brilliant as some of the other ones later on, but it's got some interesting things like "I was born to sing for you, I didn't have a choice." It's got lots of little tasty synth parts in there, which they're kind of classic U2 songs didn't necessarily have, and it's got hand claps.
Hand claps. I knew you liked the hand claps, and that's the interesting thing. You have that murky intro, and then there's also this little. It's very 80s synth. This it's really hard to explain, and then the distinct edge, clean, sharp guitar kicks in. It just, to me the whole song is very vibrant. And the other lyric is, "I'd give back my voice from the womb." So there's kind of a little bit of the mommy issues, the mommy daddy issues that he's dealt with in other albums, kind of like Mofo from the Pop album. And the other lyric that I really liked is, "Only love can leave such..." I can't read my writing here. "Only love can leave such a mark. Only love can leave such a scar." So right away, that's another one of my themes that I see, is this duality. There's nothing ever clear cut on a U2 album, and anytime there's joy, there's some type of pain or sorrow too. And to me, Magnificent it's kind of this album's beautiful day. To me, this is a beautiful album. It's kind of just about celebration and rebirth and whatnot. And it seems to really balance, interestingly, with Moment of Surrender, which we'll talk about in a second. To me, this is one of two or three standout tracks that I can see becoming one of my favorite U2 songs of all time.
So moving on to Moment of Surrender, this one, it starts out with this really extended, almost kind of majestic intro, and it reminds me of One in that way, where it's just kind of this, for one, it's kind of cathedral sounding. It's got this pipe organ sound going on, and when Bono finally, when his vocal comes in, he comes in with this kind of scream, this kind of just raw sound to his voice, and I don't know if I've really heard him make that particular sound before, and what it reminded me of was actually Eric Burdon of the Animals. It was just a very soulful, raw, almost bluesy type sound.
That's what I wrote down, was it reminded me of an old blues singer. And one of the things that we heard about this album a lot was all these new sounds and this new soundscape that we were going to hear. And I think musically maybe it's not there, but I think vocally, Bono definitely tries new things with his vocals. You hear more group singing. This is one where it's definitely Bono on the Edge and probably Brian Eno, who I'll end up talking a lot about in this album. A lot of maybe overdubs, maybe Adam and Larry are singing too. It's definitely a group vocal on a lot of these. So it's a really interesting approach to the songs and to kind of a non-linear type of song. A lot of these aren't chorus, verse, chorus, bridge, chorus, verse. It's a lot more kind of random or something. So to me, that's where the new sounds come from. Which doesn't mean they're not revisiting old themes. This one, to me, is very typical. The struggle with religion, There's a lot of religious themes in here, although it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. But just this idea, what is he surrendering? And to me, it's this idea of giving yourself up completely, all of yourself, whether it's to a higher power or to another person. And to me, this almost seems like it's about a sacrifice or something, where Magnificent was about the kind of the rebirth of that sacrifice. And the theme that was all over How to Dismantle Atomic Bomb, about falling to your knees and kind of asking for forgiveness or giving yourself up to somebody, he mentions that he's falling to my knees in this song too. So it's there, and it really kicks off to me the religious aspect of the album without being blatant, but it's definitely there, and it's definitely it goes through most of the tracks. And I love the religious imagery. There's one of my favorite lyrics here is speeding on the subway on the stations of the cross. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, there's a couple of where the lyrics really start getting really interesting here. For me, there's one early in the song. He says, "Playing with the fire till the fire played with me," and later on he says, "A vision of invisibility." And
or actually, it's a vision over visibility.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And now I'm hearing that a lot. That's the cool thing about these albums is, I mean, now I've listened to this 4 or 5 days in a row, nonstop, and I'm still hearing new things. And yeah, he says vision over visibility, and I started thinking, what does that mean? And to me, it's this idea of getting this grand vision while you kind of become invisible to everybody else around you, or you lose yourself to everybody around you as you get this great vision. And again, that can be religious, that can be just being tied to some great visionary or something. But to me, that vocal is one of those that is really sticking with me and really making me think. And I still don't fully know what it means. I found this is a very cool flip side to I still haven't found what I'm looking for. To me, that song is about young, hopeful faith, idealistic faith, where Moment of Surrender is kind of just the basics of giving yourself up. No questions asked, no holds barred. And to me, there's a real power, there's a real maturity there to this song that I still haven't found what I'm looking for has. Kind of that idealism. This is a very long song, this one and the next song. And there's it's at least a 2-minute instrumental track. And there's times when the vocals, I'm not so sure of them, but also there's this great guitar solo, just the band is playing just at top form. And it's a stunning piece of work, I think.
So from there we move on to the fourth track, Unknown Caller. This one, a lot of the reviewers of the album have been talking about this track and kind of mentioning it in particular. And so I was expecting it to be really a huge departure, just something you're not expecting to hear. And it turned out the song itself, the structure of the song and the sound of the song, to me wasn't that groundbreaking for them. But what was groundbreaking is the phrasing of the lyrics, the way it's sung again, and also this is where some of those group choruses come in, and so a lot of the phrases are kind of shouted out together among several people at once.
Yeah, short phrases, and it's very much it reminds me of Kings of Leon or Arcade Fire or early David Bowie. This again is where Brian Eno. My first thought was he joined the band here, and a lot of what I heard too. I'm expecting something very much like The Fly, because you hear these commands. Basically, the song is about this person who starts getting text messages from an unknown caller on his cell phone, and the messages are all very techie based. There's actually a couple Macintosh commands, save to trash, force quit, things like that. These are all an allegory to kind of a redirection or a direction to take your life, a new direction. And to me, this song is a great awakening. It's this moment of clarity or something. And it actually starts out with birds chirping, and then they sing kind of quietly, "Sunshine, Sunshine," which seems to me to beckon "Here Comes the Sun" by the Beatles. And then there's a few cool little blips and bleeps that remind me of Sgt. Pepper on here. And it's just a very odd song. But then it's just growing on me. Like this one, I think I'll say this about every song, but it's a very different song because of the lyric structure, and yet this is the one. It's a challenging song, but it's so worth it, and there's so many layers to it.
Yeah, and here the lyrics themselves are kind of interesting because there's phrases like escape yourself and gravity, force quit and move to trash, restart and reboot yourself. So it's using these kind of techie terms, which has been mentioned in the reviews. That's why I
Yeah,
expected it to be this
yeah,
really avant-garde song. But no, those terms, although the singing is different, they're kind of laid into still a very spiritual, a very introspective song that's really something that's along the lines of what they've always done.
yeah. The lyrics or the vocals actually remind me of "Stuck in a Moment." You can't get out of a lot, but then about halfway through, there's this horn part. It's very Sergeant Pepper to me. This horn symphony part, and then there's this just incredible guitar solo again. And again, it's another song they take their time, and there's actually kind of, if you had to map it out, there's probably 3 or 4 unique parts to it, and it's a stunning piece of work. I mean, this is a not just a simple pop song, but I think this is one of the 2 songs that Brian Eno, or was it The Edge, said in an interview just like yesterday. It was the best U2 song ever written. So, but this one is really growing on me. It was weird at first, but this is well worth it.
So the next one is if I don't go. I'm sorry. Wait, what's the exact title? I'll go crazy if I don't go crazy tonight.
Hmm.
Um, that one was another one right away from the beginning when you hear the way it starts out and you hear Edge's guitar come in. It sounds like, okay, this is a classic U2 song. Uh, as soon as so when it first started, because I one thing about me is I am very wary of U2 sounding just too formulaic, to
Hmm.
classic rock, and oh yeah, this will be great on classic rock radio. I
Hmm.
know they can do more interesting stuff than that, and that's I most enjoy the interesting stuff.
Well, and this
So
is where we should probably bring up my favorite, probably one of my favorite albums of all time. Not even just U2 albums, and we've discussed this before, and we have to bring it up. Is I love All That You Can't Leave Behind, with Beautiful Day, Stuck in a Moment, Walk On, Elevation, Kite, just some of the best songs ever. Now, Mike, on the other hand,
uh, I think All That You Can't Leave Behind is the worst of all of U2's albums.
mhm,
Uh, it just never grew on me. It to me it that's the prime example to me of formulaic U2, and I was so afraid that How to Dismantle an Atomic Bomb was going to be another formulaic album like that, and I was pleasantly surprised because
yeah.
but that album had a lot more interesting, intricate melodies on it that, in my opinion, All That You Can't Leave Behind didn't. So
And
I'm always looking for them to do interesting, different, experimental things, and that album just wasn't that.
well, to me, that album was about them stripping down and just kind of having these songs that weren't about all the blips and bleeps and layers. Um,
But
it,
I'm thinking that's okay. Like I would love for them to make a whole album that sounded like their early albums. But to me, that album, the actual melodies and the songs themselves were like any American rock band could have made that album. It was my feeling. It's like this. There's nothing unique about this that says this is U2 in particular. It was just to me, it was just like standard American rock.
so, with that disagreement that he's wrong brought to the table on, um, I do agree with him that there's a couple songs, and we'll mention these in this review, that are very much this beacon, this call to All That You Can't Leave Behind. And what I do notice the difference is for this song, I'll Go Crazy If I Don't Go Crazy Tonight, it sounds to me like it should be right between Walk On and Kite. There's that very kind of Beautiful Day, Walk On guitar thing that happens. And this, for the most part, is a little bit more of a simple song. There's not quite as many layers as some of the other ones. But there's something very clean about it, and that reminds me of All That You Can't Leave Behind. But I see what you're saying. this compared to All That You Can't Leave Behind, there's something else going on. Maybe there are more layers that I'm just not hearing. There's more switches and kind of U-turns and things like that in the vocals that work really well. So it's not just kind of a guitar, straight out guitar song. This one has the group vocals again. It's a very uplifting kind of one of those songs where the guitar and Bono, everything soars. So I do see where you're saying that, but it's funny that I still hear All That You Can't Leave Behind with it.
Yeah, for me, like it's the song started off, and I thought, oh, this is just standard formula. But then halfway through the first verse, and all the verses, they do this chord change, and
Yeah.
suddenly, oh, okay, that's interesting. I didn't expect that, and that wouldn't be in a formulaic song of theirs. So okay, I'll give this one another chance, and it's really grown on me.
Yeah, it's a very uplifting song. I love the first lyric. It starts out where she's a rainbow, which to me reminds me of the Rolling Stones song "She's a Rainbow." And then there's a lot of lyrics too. Again, in this song about kind of dichotomy. And the lyric I love is, "There's a part of me that wants to be quiet, and there's a part of me that wants to riot." That's kind of this album where you have these beautiful melodies or lyrics, and then it takes this this U-turn. So there's a lot of that going on all over the place. It's still very U2 though. This is another one I put an asterisk by. There's like three very typical U2 songs here, but I still feel like they elevate to a different level. This will definitely be a radio hit if they release it, and this would actually be a great live track, kind of great finale track, just like I thought Walk On was.
Yeah, and one thing that happens here is, again, there's some of the really good lyrics in this one, but here they start to bring in this kind of playful and self-deprecating element, which helps, because a lot of these songs do have that kind of, very earnest sound that some people really got sick of after the Joshua Tree, and it could be this album could be crushed under the weight of its own self-importance if not for the fact that Bono is obviously taking himself very not seriously. And so there's lines in this song like, every beauty needs to go out with an idiot, and the right to be ridiculous is something I hold dear. So it's the sound that sometimes the song can sound very majestic, but he's willing to puncture that balloon with some kind of silly or self-deprecating lyrics, which really helps.
Yeah, he's definitely, there's a maturity here. He's very aware of everything he presents to the media that we see of him. His activism, and yet that the fact that he's still a rock star, and we shouldn't be paying attention to him as much as we do. But that will be down the road in this review. So yeah, great lyrics. There's a lot of fun. They're truly, I think, enjoying this stage in their career as a band, and you can really hear that joy in that music, I think. So yeah, that's a great song. The first 5 songs on this album, this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 punch is just, to me, if this were an album, this would be a classic side 1 album.
Yeah, and the next song that's coming up is "Get on Your Boots," which would be a great start to side 2. So this would be a good place for a transition. We're going to go from side 1 here to what we would call side 2 back in the days of vinyl.
So side 2, follow the link right down here. We're going to jump over to Mike's channel and break things up a little bit. So thanks for watching or listening to side 1, and we'll meet you back on side 2.
See you over there.